Hey everyone, this is Neil from Edureka and welcome to today's session on Python tutorial. Now the main objective of today's session is to help you build a good fundamental knowledge in Python. Now it's always essential that you have a good fundamental knowledge if you wish to master any programming language. Now keeping that in mind, let's move forward and look at today's agenda. Now we'll begin this session by first having an introduction to Python and we'll understand who uses Python in the industry and for what purpose. After that, we'll be looking at some of the main features that Python has to offer as well as the various operators and data types in Python. Then we'll look at the flow control management in Python and functions in Python. Now finally, towards the end of our session, we'll be discussing how you can perform file handling using Python. So any questions with respect to today's agenda? Okay, Sandeep is clear, John, Ajay, Raj, Divya. So let's move forward and have an introduction to Python. Now, Python was created by Tudor Rossum in 1989 and is one of the most easiest languages that you can pick up. Now, Python follows an interpreted logic compared to the compiler logic which most other programming languages follow. Apart from that, it is an object-oriented programming language as well as a high-level programming language with dynamic semantics. Now, you can see in the image below, Python follows both object-oriented programming style as well as procedural programming style, and it is a high-level language and is one of the easiest to pick. So I have my first question here. What is the difference between an interpreter and a compiler? Alright Raj, so let me put it this way. Now in case if you are using an interpreter to check the errors in your code, so what happens is the interpreter reads every line individually. It reads one by one, and in case if it finds an error in one of the lines, what it does is stop processing it and it gives the user an indication that this line has an error. Now when you look at a compiler, there what happens is that the entire code is processed in one go and then you get the complete list of errors present. So I hope that was clear, Raj. Alright, so any more questions? So Divya has a question here, what is the difference between object-oriented and procedure-oriented? Now don't worry Divya, we'll be discussing this in the upcoming slides, so I just request you to be a bit patient. Alright, so I've got a confirmation from Santosh, Ajay asking me to move forward, great. Now let's look at who uses Python in the industry. Now here are 8 companies that make use of Python in different domains. When I say domains again, I refer how Python is being used for various application development, various fields of interest again. So let me give you a better idea. So let's look at YouTube. Now YouTube is one of the most popular video sharing services present today. Now YouTube is largely written using Python. So there Python is being used as a scripting as well as a programming language. Again, when you look at Google, which is its parent company, it uses Python to improve its web search systems. So Python there helps you to get better search results as such. Now on the opposite side of this, when you look at organizations like NASA, now NASA makes use of Python for its scientific programming tasks. So here again they'll be using a Python program that can be used to perform very large scientific calculations. Again, when you look at NSA, which is the National Security Agency of US, they make use of Python for cryptographic analysis purpose. So you can see how Python is being used across different domains, different organizations. So if you see present trends, Python is present in most of the domains as such. So I hope with this you've got an idea of how Python is widely being used in the industry today, and it would have also given you certain idea of how Python is presently doing in the industry. Now moving forward, let's look at some of the features that Python has to offer us, and these are the key features based on which Python is being used so widely across in the industry. Now to start off, you can see Python is simple and easy to learn. Now the reason that Python is simple and easy to learn is mainly because it resembles the English language a lot, and when you check out the other programming languages, compared to them, it's quite easy to read and write programs in Python. Now after that, Python is also a free and open source program. Again, it follows the FLOSS philosophy where you have free and open source software, so you can freely distribute as well as read, modify its source code and again distribute it as well. So you may have different flavors of Python as well, and you can use any one of them and distribute them without any problems. Okay, so Jaya has a question here, is Python simpler than Java and C++? Definitely Jaya. When you look at the comparison between C++ and Java, definitely I would assure you Python is one of the most easiest language to learn. Because let's say if you're writing a program in Java that would take up about 200-300 lines of code, here using Python it would just be about 50-60 lines of code. So you've completely cut down the number of codes to about 20% of your actual size. Now moving forward, then as you may be aware of, Python is a high level programming language. When we talk about high level, it basically means that you can write your code directly using English, and Python will in turn convert it to the low level machine language. So when we talk about low level language, it basically refers to the assembly level programming language. Now those are written usually in ones and zeros, but at any point if you make any mistake, it becomes tedious. So through Python, what happens is you'll be writing your program in a high level language, and then when you compile it, then it gets converted to a low level language for the machine to read and understand. After that, when we look at the portability of Python, now Python is supported by most platforms present in the industry today. It could be a Linux platform, it could be a Macintosh platform, it could be even a Windows platform, or let's say even your PlayStation supports Python. Then moving forward, Python supports different paradigm. Now again, when we refer to the programming paradigm, this mainly refers to the 4 different styles of writing program. You have the object-oriented style, you have the procedural style as well, paradigm, and then finally we have the logical paradigm. Now Python supports 2 of these major paradigms, that is the object-oriented paradigm as well as procedure-oriented paradigm. Now here, coming back to your question, Divya, when we talk about object-oriented style and procedure-oriented style, procedure-oriented style is mostly preferred when you're going to be writing a program that has to be executed step by step. So there you'll be using smaller operatives like functions, where you'll divide your code into small bits and store it as a function so that you can reuse it as well. Again, but when you look at object-oriented style, you will be making use of user-defined classes, objects, and so forth. Now don't worry if you're not completely clear on this, we'll be talking more about classes, objects in our upcoming session. Now the final and one of the most important feature is the extendability of Python. Now when we talk about the extendability, in Python you can completely integrate Java as well as .NET components, and if you wish you can even invoke C and C++ libraries as well. So again, you can perform cross-language operations as well. So with this, Python is completely extendable to most popular languages. Now I hope you were clear with Python's features. Okay, so Raj says clear, so does Santosh, Matthew, John, Ron, Divya. That's great to hear, guys. Please let me know in case at any point if you're not clear, then I'll be able to help you out and clarify it then and there itself. And make sure you're making this an interactive session because I want you to have a complete learning experience. Now before we move forward, let's begin by installing Python in our system. Now to download Python, all you need to do is go to python.org and you can download the version of Python present in their homepage. Now let me show you how it's done. So just open your browser and type python.org. So on the home page itself, in the first tab, you can find download option present here. So in case if you're using a Windows system, you can directly download Python version 3.6. So this is the version that we will be following as part of our course. So make sure you're downloading Python 3.6 version, not 2.7.13. And in case if you're using any other system, let's say for Mac, for example, just click on Mac and then you can find all the releases for Mac OS. So please go ahead and download the version of Python, and the installation is quite easy. It's just simple steps where you have to keep clicking next, and in case you're facing troubles, I'm here, I'll be able to assist you. Okay, Sangeeta is asking me why are there 2 versions of Python. Alright Sangeeta, so this is mainly because there are still organizations that make use of Python version 2.7. So what Python has done is it's not stopped completely development with version 2.7, but still it keeps adding new features to Python 3.6. So I'd recommend you follow 3.6 version itself, and 2.7 is mainly for those organizations that are still working on 2.7 version. There's not much difference, but certain differences are there with respect to syntax. Don't worry. You will be mostly working on Python 3.6 version in the industry itself. Alright, so now that all of you have downloaded and installed Python on your system, let's move forward and install another IDE on which we'll be coding our Python codes. Now, I'd recommend that you download PyCharm IDE, as this is one of the most popular and widely used IDE, and it's very simple to use as well. Okay, so John is asking me why do I need a separate IDE. So John, when you install Python, by default an IDE provided by Python is already installed in your system, that is idle. But let's say you're working on multiple files that are related to each other, or let's say you're working on a huge project itself with multiple interrelated files as such. Now in that case, idle would not be an ideal IDE for you to work on, and that's exactly why I recommend that you download PyCharm. Now to download PyCharm, just search for download PyCharm, and then just click on the first link that you see. So when you do that, you will automatically be directed to the download page. Here you have two versions of PyCharm available. One is the community as well as the professional version. Now I recommend that you download the community version, as the professional version is a paid version, and most of the learning as well as the practicals that you wish to execute can be done on the community version itself. So please go ahead and download and install PyCharm. In case if you're facing any troubles, do let me know. I'll be able to assist you. Alright, so now that all of you have downloaded and installed PyCharm, it will be really helpful for us to simultaneously learn and work it out. So when I'm showing you an example, you can simultaneously try it out parallelly. So in case if you're not clear or if you're stuck at any point, I can help you out. So let's move forward and look at the operators present in Python. Now there are mainly 7 different types of operators present in Python. Now the first is the arithmetic operator, then we have the assignment operator, then comparison operator, logical operator, following that is bitwise operator, after that is the identity operator, and finally we have the membership operator. Now don't worry, we'll be looking at each of them individually as well as what and all operators they have present in these domains. Now first off, we look at arithmetic operators. Now these are simple mathematical operators that you've seen earlier: addition, subtraction, multiplication and division. And apart from these 4 basic operators, you also have exponential operator, modulus operator and floor division operator. Now when we talk about the exponential operator, basically when you have to write a number to the exponential power, let's say 5 power 10, then you would be representing 5 to the power 10 normally, but in case while you're using it on Python, it would be written 5 double star 10. So here you can see we've written 2 double star 3, that is 2 to the power 3, gives us the answer of 8. Now after that is the modulus division. Now normal division basically gives us the quotient of dividing, but in case of a modulus division we actually get the remainder here. So there would be certain cases where you wish to have the remainder rather than the quotient, and this is where modulus operator comes into handy. So let me give you an example. Let's say if you wish to check if a number is even, then definitely you can use the modulus operator and check if it is completely divisible by 2. And after that we have the floor division. Now when we talk about floor division, here basically what you're doing is that you're dividing a number, and if there's any decimal part to that number, you're rounding it off to the lower part. So let's say if you get an answer of 5.6, then you're rolling it down to 5. So don't worry if you're not clear, I'll show you an example, and that way it'll be easier for you to understand. Let's just open our PyCharm. So here let's begin by basic arithmetic operators. Now 2 things to be kept in mind here. Now firstly, you do not need to declare a data type for a variable that you're using, and you do not need to declare the variables before you use them. So in case if you work with other programming languages, let's say C or Java, there what you need to do is that first you need to specify the variable name, then you need to specify the variable type, and only then can you use that variable as part of your program. But in Python you can keep declaring variables as per your needs. So let's say you have 2 numbers, let's say num1 which is equal to 10, and I have num2 which is equal to 20. Now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to directly display all the arithmetic operators. So to print anything onto your screen, you can use the inbuilt operator print. So just type P and you can see the print command directly prompted. Now this is something that is very helpful in case if you're using an IDE, because it directly starts predicting what commands you wish to execute or what variables you're going to be using. So let's say print, I'll start off with num1 plus num2 equal to. Now here put a comma and then you can specify the addition operator. So let's say similarly, let me just copy paste for all the arithmetic operators. So then we have subtraction. After that is multiplication. And then we'll look at division. Then we had discussed 3 new operators that were exponential power, modulus and floor division. So let me just give you examples for them as well. Let's say for exponential power, I'm going to compute 5 power 3. For modulus, let's say I'm going to divide 20 by 3. And finally, for floor division, to help you understand, let's take a very popular example. Let's say I'm going to compute 22 divided by 7. Now we are all aware that this leads to the value of pi, that is 3.14, and goes on to be a non-terminating, but let's just see what answer we would get when we do floor division here. Now before I go ahead and print there are a few things that I want you to notice. Now I've used double parentheses some places, I've used single parentheses some places, but don't worry, in Python it does not differentiate. Now whichever parenthesis you do, Python definitely accepts it as part of a string. So let's go ahead and run this program. Right click on the workspace and you can directly run the program by clicking on run operation. So you have the results here. Addition you have 10, for subtraction minus 10, multiplication 200 and division 0.5. Now 5 to the power 3 has given me 1.125, and then when I modulus divide 20 by 3 I get a remainder of 2. Finally, we had seen when we do perform floor division, the value which was supposed to be 3.14 followed by multiple digits has been rounded off to 3. So this is what I was talking about when I talk about floor division. So are you clear with respect to the arithmetic operators? So Rachel has a question here, what happens in case if my value is 1.7? Now Rachel, irrespective of any value that is above a whole number, so let me just give you an example. So let's say 3.8 floor divided by 2. Now this is supposed to give us a value of 1.9. Let me just show you what output you would be getting. So you can see you're getting the value as 1. Now where it should have been 1.9, it has been rounded off to 1. So is that clear, Rachel? Alright, so let's move forward and look at the next set of operators, that is the assignment operators. Now before I go into the assignment operators, there are two things I'd like to put across. Now the first thing is, when do you use an assignment operator? So let's say I have three variables. So num3 equal to num1 plus num2. So in this case what happens is that first the expression to the right is computed and then the value is assigned to the left variable. Now this is important that you remember, it's always the expression to the right is first computed and then you're assigning to the left variable. Now this is in case when you're using three variables. Let's say you need to use only two variables. Now what happens in that case is that when you say num3 equal to num3 plus num2. Now this becomes a tedious task while you're repeatedly using this. So Python actually gives us a shorthand writing using assignment operator. So let me just comment this. And here you can rewrite this expression, that is num3 is equal to num3 plus num2 as num3 plus equal to num2. So this directly translates to this expression. It is just that we are using a shorthand writing using assignment operator. So we are combining an arithmetic operator to an assignment option and then we are storing it into a variable. So this comes into handy when you're working with two variables. So are you clear with this? Okay, let me just print it and show you, that way it will be easier for you to understand. Let's say print num3 and I'll print num3 here also. So if you just run it, you can see the value 30 and 50. Now 10 plus 20 is giving me 30. You can see we had 10 as num1 and 20 as num2. That is giving me the value of num3 to be 30. That is getting printed here. And then when I'm performing num3 plus equal to num2, that is add and assign num2 to num3, then we're getting the value as 50. So are you clear with this? So now that you have understood how the assignment operator works, let's look at some of the examples here. Now we'll begin by first assuming the value of x to be 5. Now when you perform divide and assign, what happens is 5 divided gets divided by 5 and gets stored in x. Again 5 modulo 5 is stored in x and you're printing it as 0. 5 floor divided by 2. So where you would have got 2.5, due to floor division it is being rounded off to 2 and it is being stored in x. Similarly 5 to the power 5 and the value is 3125. So this value is stored in x. So are you clear with respect to the assignment operator? Okay, Divya says yes. So does Santosh, Sandeep, Ajay, Raj, Ron, Matthew. That's great. So let's move forward to the next operator, that is the comparison operator. Now using the comparison operator you can compare two operands. So we have the greater than, less than, equal to and not equal to. So in case if you were not clear earlier, single equal to when you're using is considered to be an assignment operator and double equal to is a comparison operator where you're comparing both the operands. Now the output of a comparison operator is always a Boolean value. Now don't get confused when I say a Boolean value, it just basically means it will either be true or false. So let me just show you the outputs of these operators. Let's say print num3 greater than num2, let's say num2 equal to num3, print is num1 not equal to num2. Now always make sure you put a comma there, but in case if you do not do that, what happens is you get a syntax error. So make sure always after you specifying a string in this print statement, if you're going to print a variable, then you specify with a comma. Num1 not equal to, now again when you say not equal to, it's an exclamation mark and then you have an equal to operator. Let's just run this. Again, right click on the workspace and select run. So you can see, is num3 greater than num2? Yes, it is true because the value of num3 is 50. Similarly, is num2 equal to num3? No, it's not. And finally, is num1 not equal to num2? Yes, it is not equal to, because num1 is 10 and num2 is 20. So any questions still here? Alright, now I'll just show you one thing. Now before you go ahead, you can for commenting in Python, you can either use a hash operator, or let's say if you're performing a multi-line comment, then use triple quotes, and whatever you enclose in this is considered to be a multi-line comment. I'll just comment all these print statements. Let me just rerun this so that it's easier for you to understand. So you can see here again in the output, is num3 greater than num2? It is true. Is num2 equal to num3? Which is false. And finally, is num1 not equal to num2? Yes, it is true. So are we clear with respect to the comparison operators? Okay, Matthew is clear, so is John. Ajay is asking me to move forward. That's great, Ajay. I hope you're clear with this. Please make sure you're trying out these codes simultaneously so that you can have a complete learning experience, and in case if you're facing any troubles, I can clarify it there itself. So moving forward, we'll look at logical operators. Now when we talk about logical operators, there are basically three logical operators. They are AND, OR, and NOT. So when you talk about AND, it returns the value of x if x is false. That is, if x is equal to 0 or any negative number, it considers it to be false, and otherwise it returns y. So you can see here 2 and 3. Since 2 is greater than 0, therefore it is returning 3. But at the same time, if you're using an OR operator, if x is false, then it returns y, else it returns x. So 2 or 3 gives me 2 in this case. And finally, when we have not basically converts the value. So when you say not of 1, then where 1 is considered to be true, then it becomes false. So let me just show you how these work out. So let's say x is equal to true. Now in case if you're going to use standard values of true and false, make sure they start with capital T and capital X, because these are reserved keywords. And y is false. Okay, so Sam is asking me what do I mean by reserved keywords. So Sam, basically when I say reserved keywords, there are certain keywords that you cannot use as part of your program, because these are already being used by this Python system and they have a corresponding value set. Now true is a keyword which has a corresponding value of 1, and false is a keyword which has a corresponding value of 0. So I hope that was clear. Alright, so let's print, let's say x and y. Similarly, let's print x or y. And finally, let me print not of x. So you can see here when we're using reserved keywords, they are getting bolded and you can see them differently. To identify if they're reserved keyword or not, your IDE will always prompt you, but in case if you have disabled auto prediction, then what you can see is after you've typed it, you can see whether it's bolded or not. In case if it's bolded, then it is considered to be a system reserved keyword. So let me just run this. So here you can see x and y is giving me false, x or y is giving me true, and not of x is giving me false. So x, which was initially true, is considered to be false. And you can see since x is true, it's returning the value of y here. And similarly, since x is true here, it is returning the value of x. So are you clear with respect to the logical operators? Okay, so Raj is asking me, where do we use logical operators? Now Raj, logical operators play a very important role when, let's say, you're using multiple conditions for a conditional statement. So in case of you're using an if where you have to specify multiple conditions, then these logical operators come into handy. Now don't worry, I'll be showing you a case where you'll be using multiple conditions inside an if statement and you'll be using a logical operator to connect them. So any other doubts with respect to logical operators? Alright, so seems like everyone is clear. So let's move forward and look at bitwise operators. Now when we talk about bitwise operators, these operators are similar to your logical operators, but what is important is that you understand how they work. So in case of a bitwise operator, what happens is that the value that you specify, its bit value is considered. So let's say in case if you're performing bitwise OR on 7 and 5. Now what happens is that 7 is converted to its bit value, that is 111, 5 is converted to its bit value 101, and then individually on these numbers you would be performing bitwise operations. So here in this case you would be performing OR. Now in case if you're not familiar with the logic of OR operator, what happens is that you get the output to be 1 in case if you have at least 1 as the input. So you can see we have two ones here, so the output is 1. Again you have 1 and 0, so since one output is 1, then you're getting the output as 1. Again you have 1 and 1, and this final output value translates to 7. But when you look at an AND operator, only in case if you have 1 and 1 to be the inputs, then do you get the output to be 1. So you can see in case of the second value, 1 and 0 is being considered, but the output is 0. Now apart from that you have the XOR operator. Now in the XOR operator the output is given as 1 only in case if you have odd number of ones as input. So you can see if you have two ones, then the output is 0. In case if you have 1 and a 0, then the output is 1. So the XOR of 7 and 5 is giving us an output of 2. So let me show you an example of this, so that will help you understand better. So let's go back to our PyCharm. Let me just comment this section. So here let's consider two new numbers, let's say num4, which is equal to 6, and num5, which is equal to 2. Now the bitwise value of 6 is 110 and the bitwise value of 2 is 010. Now what we're going to do is that we're going to perform bitwise operation on these. So let's say print so we need to perform bitwise AND operation first. So let's say num4 to perform AND, use the ampersand operator, and num5. Similarly, let's say print bitwise OR. Num4, for OR you're going to be using vertical slash and num5. Finally bitwise XOR. Now to perform bitwise XOR, use the exponential key and num5. Let's run it and see. So for bitwise AND you're getting the value to be 2. Again if you see for AND I had mentioned only in case if you have two ones do you get the value to be 1. So you can see only for the center value you have 1 and 1, so therefore the value for bitwise AND is 2. But when you look at bitwise OR, the value is set to be 6 because you have 0 and 0 being compared, 1 and 1 being compared giving me output of 1, and 1 and 0 being giving me output of 1. So the value is 6, and when you see bitwise OR, only in case if you have 1 and 0 do you get the output to be 1. So only for the first position does it get the value of 1. So are you clear with respect to bitwise operation? Okay, so Santosh is asking me what is the difference between bitwise operation and logical operators. Now again, Santosh, it is basically the values that you will be working on, whereas logical operators work with the complete value. Bitwise operators work on a bit level. That is, your value is first converted to a bit representation and then you will be performing the operations. Are you clear? Okay, so apart from these three bitwise operations, we have two more bitwise operations. The first is the left shift and the second is the right shift. Now, when we talk about left shift and right shift, what basically happens is that first the value is converted to a bit representation. So here in case we are taking 3. And then what happens is you're going to specify which type of shift you want to perform. So in case if you're going to perform a left shift, then you're going to be using 2 smaller than signs. In case if you're performing a right shift, then you're going to be using 2 greater than signs. Now once you've done that, you're going to specify the number of places you wish to shift. So here it's been specified as 2. So what happens basically is that first one is pushed out and the second one gets pushed into its position. Similarly, when you perform the second shift, even the remaining one gets pushed out and it gets converted to the value 0. But when you look at left shift, what happens is the value of the one keeps moving towards the left. Basically, you're moving the values according to the shift that you're specifying by the number of positions that you have set. Now I'll give you an example here. Let's go back to our PyCharm. Here let me print num4. I'm going to perform a right shift by 2 positions. Let's say we're going to perform left shift on num5, so num5 left shift by again 2 positions. So let's just see what values we get as the output. So if you run it, you get the value as 1 because the 0 gets discarded and gets replaced by 1. Similarly, that one gets discarded and replaced by the second one. So you have 1, 0, 0 that gets translated to 1, and when we look at the left shift operator, 2 goes to 4th place and then from 4th place it goes to 8th place. So again you've shifted to the left by 2 places. So are you clear with respect to left shift and right shift? Alright, so I've got a confirmation from John, Matthew, Ajay. That's great to see. Now moving forward, let's look at the identity operator. Now the identity operator is something that is really helpful when you're writing long codes and you're not sure of the current value of that variable. So instead of always printing and checking out the value, what you can do is that you can use an identity variable. Now let's look at the example mentioned here. So you can see x has been declared as 5. Now somewhere between my program, I'm not sure if x is equal to 5. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to use x is equal to 5 and then check the corresponding output value. So since my value of x is still 5, it is printing true, and let's say if you're checking if it is not equal to 5, then it prints corresponding. Now I don't think you need an example to understand this program, so let's move forward to look at the membership operator. Now when we talk about the membership operator, this is something that deals with lists. Now don't get confused if you're not heard of lists. This is a data type that is present only in Python. We'll be discussing about lists and tuples exclusively in our next section, but let me just give you an overview here. List basically is a collection of multiple objects. So this is somewhat similar to your array in C or C++ or Java. Now the only difference between the array and a list is that there is no restriction on the type of variable that you can store in a list. So here what we've done is we've just stored numbers, but let's say if you wish to store a string, then you can store that as well in a list. So using the membership operator, what we're doing is that we're checking if a certain value is present in the list. So you can see here 3 is being checked in the list X, and you can see it is giving us a value true because 3 is present in the list. Similarly, when we see if 3 is not in X, then it gives us a false. Now don't worry, I'll give you an example of this when we're talking about lists. So any questions with respect to the 7 types of operators that we have seen? Are we clear with everything? Have you executed the codes as I was mentioning it? Please let me know if you're facing any troubles. I'll be able to assist you and clarify your doubts right away. Okay, so I've got a confirmation from Ron, John, Santosh, Matthew, Divya. That's great to see, guys. I really hope you guys are learning in this session. Now moving forward, let's talk about the data types that are present in Python. Now as you've seen, Python is a loosely typed language, and we've also seen that we do not need to define a data type for that variable. This is something that Python defines as per the value that you have given for that variable. Similarly, as you have seen, we can declare a variable whenever we need them. Now here what you are seeing is a list of 6 native data types present in Python. We'll be talking about the user-defined data types in our next session. Now again, when you look at the classification of data types, they can mainly be classified into immutables and mutables. Now what we mean by immutable basically is that if a value has been assigned to that data type, then it cannot be changed. Now the best example for this is a tuple. So this is something similar to the list itself that we have seen earlier. Now here what happens is that once you've set the values present in a tuple, you cannot update these values. Now this is somewhat similar to a fixed list where you cannot modify the existing values. Now don't worry, we'll be talking about each of these types in detail. So let's begin by looking at the numeric data type. Now in the numeric data type, there are mainly 3 classifications. Firstly, we have the integer data type, where again you have storing whole numbers. Then you have the float data type, where you're storing decimal valued numbers. And finally we have the complex type. Now when you look at normal complex numbers, the only difference in Python is that where you would write real number plus imaginary number I in real world, here in Python you would be replacing I with a j. So that's the only difference, but the overall use and the operations that you'll be performing on these will remain same. So are you clear with the 3 numeric types? Okay, so John has an interesting question here. So John is asking me if Python supports double type or long integer type. Now by default, integers are considered to be long int, and there's no separate double type here, because what happens is that the maximum range of these numeric types is set based on your system memory. So what happens is when you're using a decimal value, then it takes the maximum range. So are you clear? Okay, so let's move forward and look at the next data type, that is strings. Now here again, when we talk about strings, it is basically a collection of words. So as you've seen earlier, a string can basically be defined in either single quotes or double quotes. And in case if you wish to use a multi-line string, then all you need to do is that enclose it within 6 parentheses. Now when I say 6 quotes, it basically means you'll be using totally 12 quotes, 6 in the beginning and 6 in the end. So when you do that, Python automatically recognizes it to be a multi-line string. So Ajay has a question here. Do we need to set a value for these strings? No, Ajay. Now I assume that you mean the size of a string. Now I'm sure you would have worked on programming languages like C or Java, where you need to first specify the range of that string. So let's say you're going to be using a 25 character string, then you need to explicitly define it first, then only you can use it. But here, since we are not specifically declaring any data types as well as a variable before we use it, Python automatically assigns that memory. So that avoids the hassle of assigning memory for that variable as well. So coming back to your question, you do not need to define a size for the string before you use it. Are we clear? Alright. So let's move forward and look at some of the operations that you can perform using strings. Now these are basic sequence operations that you can perform using string. So one of the most popular is string concatenation. Now again, to perform string concatenation, all you need to do is use the plus operator. So you have string 1, that is Python, string 2 is tutorial, and it gets combined to Python tutorial. Similarly, let's say if you wish to repeat a string, then all you need to do is use the star operator once followed by number of times you wish to repeat it. So that gets repeated the number of times that you have specified. Now when you talk about slicing, it basically means extracting characters from a string. So you need to specify the start point as well as the end point, and then the characters would be extracted from these values and you would be getting the output. Finally, we have the string indexing. Now you can always access individual characters of a string. Now this is basically what is done using indexing. Now rather than confusing you all with theories, let me show you these practically. Now let's go back to our PyCharm. I'll begin by declaring 2 strings. So let's call them string 1 and string 2. Now I'll enclose my first string in a single quote, and then let me write string 2. I'll put it in double quotes, let's say tutorial. And then let's begin the operations that we have just seen. Now for string concatenation, let's say print string 1 plus string 2. Similarly, for repetition, I had mentioned you need to use star operator, string 2, star 3. Let me just show you the outputs of these two operations. So you can see string 1 has been concatenated to string 2 and string 2 has been repeated 3 times. Again, moving forward, let's talk about slicing. So here what I'm going to do is print string 2, open a square bracket, and here let's say the start and end point. Now Python's indexing system, that is the numbering system, starts from 0 instead of 1. So if you say the second character, when you say 2, it basically refers to the third character. So let's say 3, 6. If I print it, you can see from 4th character till the 7th character. Okay, so who can tell me the answer for this command? Let's say print string 2. Can anyone guess? Okay, so I've got multiple answers. Let's check who's correct. Let me just run it. And it is TUT. So since there's no start point, it is considering 3 to be the start point. Now let me show you with respect to indexing. If I say just 3, what happens? Let me just run it. It is taking the 4th character. What happens if I say -3? Any guesses? Let's run it. It is giving me 3rd from the last position. Good one, Raj. So let me show you another thing. Let's say 2, -3. If I run this, you can see from the 3rd position till the 3rd last position. So TOR is being extracted and printed. So are you clear with how you can perform slicing and indexing as well as string concatenation and repetition? Okay, that's great. Now moving forward, let's look at some type specific operations. So when we talk about type specific operations, using the string object, you can perform certain operations. So these are just some of the examples. You have about 4 here. So let's say 1, if you have string Edureka, then if you use string.find, basically it checks the substring that you have specified and its starting location in the original string. Now this comes in handy when, let's say, you're using a multi-line string and there you need to search for a single word. After that you have replace. So let's say if you wish to replace a certain character or a substring with a specific substring, then you can specify it here. So right, we had ed, we are replacing it with just e. Similarly, if you wish to split a string, then all you need to do is specify the character based on which you have to split. So you can see here my original string Edureka is separated where each alphabet is separated by a comma. So I'm specifying my split operation to be split as based on a comma, and then you're getting a list as to the output. So remember, this is not a string, this is a list as my output. And then finally you have the count operation. Now in the count operation, what you're basically doing is that you're checking the number of times a specific character is present. So in this case, I have an original string that is Edureka, in which I'm checking my number of e's. After that, if you wish, you can specify the beginning position and the end position through which you need to compare. So I'm checking from the 1st position till the 6th position. Now it would be considered to be 0 because, as I mentioned earlier, Python starts its indexing from 0. So you do not need to specify begin equal to 0 and end equal to 0. You have to specify 0, 6 and then it will begin the counting. I'll just show you these 4 operations. Let's say in string 1. Now if you wish to check all the type specific methods, just specify your string object, then a dot object. So automatically PyCharm will predict you all the inbuilt type specific methods available for string. So you can use whichever to your choice. Now I'm just showing you a few of them, but I definitely recommend that you explore all of these, and in case if you're not clear with any of these functions, do let me know, I'll be able to assist you. So let's say count. I want to count p in my Python string, and I'm going to set the range to 0 to 5. Now before you run it, let's print it directly. So you can see 0. Can anyone tell me why it is showing me 0 when my string is starting from p? That's right, Divya. It's mainly because it is case sensitive. So at the same time, if I put capital P and I run it, then you can see it is finding out to be 1. So always remember, this is a case sensitive operation. Similarly, let's say if you wish to find something, so let's say print string 1 dot find. Now let's say the substring that you wish to find in this original string. So I would say on. Now make sure the substring is in quotes and just run it. It says it is starting from position 4. Now if you check 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So the reason it is showing 4 is because my indexing starts from 0. Always remember that, because this is something that most people at times make a mistake. Now coming back, let's say you have another set of operations. Now this basically talks about string.upper. Basically, if you wish to convert a string to completely uppercase, then you can use the upper. Now max and min are some of the most interesting string operations that I like. So anyone can guess what these operations can do? You can see the example here. Can anyone guess it? No, John, it is not the maximum occurring letter. Yes, that's correct, Sandeep. So here when you use max operation on a string, what basically happens is that it checks the complete string and sees which alphabet is higher up in the alphabetical order. So in case of the word Edureka, U is the highermost word, therefore you get U. But when you look at the minimum most word, it is A. When you use is alpha, it basically means you're checking if my string has alphabet. So apart from is alpha, there are certain other operations. Let me show you. So apart from that, let me just see string dot, when you say is operation itself. So here you can see is alnum, that means alphanumerical. Is it alphabet? Is it decimal? Does it contain digit? Does it have identifier? Is it in lowercase? Is it numerical? And so forth. There are so many operations that you can perform using strings. So I definitely recommend that you try them out. But any point, if you do have any doubts, do let me know right away and I'll be able to clarify it. So go ahead and try out the various type specific methods and let me know in case if you're facing any troubles. If you just print this, I can show you an output for this operation. It says it's true. That means it contains alphabet. Now one advantage of using the PyCharm IDE, and one of the key reasons that I'd recommend that you start with PyCharm itself, is because of its predictability. Now again, now you're using a new function which you're not familiar with. Let's say string 1 dot. So let's say you're going to perform string dot split. So when you type S itself, it starts predicting the various operators. Now apart from that, it also tells you the arguments that these operators require. Now for split, it says that it's going to be performing on itself. It needs to understand a separator as well as the maximum number of splits that you wish to put it into. Now this will make your learning process easier, as well as it will make you clear with respect to the arguments that these operators take in. So go ahead and try out some of the type specific methods and I'll be here to help you out in case if you face any troubles. Alright, so now that you've tried out some of the string type specific methods, let's move forward and look at tuple. Now we've discussed earlier, a tuple is similar to a string, but it is immutable. That is, you cannot change the values that are present inside a tuple. Now to define a tuple, what you need to do is specify the name of that tuple, then put an equal to, and then the parenthesis. So this is a curly parenthesis. Make sure you use the right one, because each of the data types use a different style of parenthesis. Where tuple uses parenthesis, lists actually make use of square braces. And when you come down to dictionaries and set, they actually use curly braces. So make sure you use the right braces to define your tuples, lists, and dictionaries. So any doubts with respect to tuples? Okay, John wants to know how tuples are immutable. So John, I'll show you that in an example. Before that, just give me 2 minutes. Again, these are the operations that you can perform using a tuple. You can perform tuple concatenation, you can perform tuple repetition, slicing, and similarly tuple indexing. Again, so let me just give you an overview here. So I've set the name of my tuple to be mytup equal to use curved braces. So in this you can define whatever you wish. Let's say I'm going to give the name Neil. I'll call, so Raj is here, so I'll give his name in. Again Sandeep. So Sandeep. Anyone else? Oh, I'm sorry, Divya is also here. Okay, so I'll just stick to these four names and I'll show you the operations that you can perform using tuples. So when we talk about tuple concatenation, so you can print directly the concatenated operator, but one thing you need to keep in mind is that while you're concatenating, you need to be sure of what you specify as the second tuple. Now I'll just give you an example. Let's say if you put mytup plus, and here you need to be sure that you're specifying the second tuple or the second character that you wish. So here you need to be sure what you specify is inside curve braces. So let me add Ron into this. But if you specify only one character, it considers it to be a string. So what you need to do is that you need to ensure there are more than one characters. So apart from Ron, let's say Sanjay is also here. So I'm going to put Sanjay's name. And let me just run this. So you can see Neil, Raj, Sandeep, Divya, Ron and Sanjay are present. But don't misunderstand, these have not been added to my original tuple. It is just that while I'm printing, I'm adding this tuple detail as well. Now you don't have to define it here itself. Let's say you have another tuple as well, then you can directly specify that tuple name here itself. So are you clear? Alright, now when we talk about repetition, again you're going to be using the star operator. So if you just print this, you can see Neil, Raj, Sandeep, Divya. Again, Neil, Raj, Sandeep, Divya, Neil, Raj, Sandeep, Divya. So 3 times all the elements of the tuple have been repeated in the same order. When we come to slicing, I'm going to, let's see, my tuple of -1. Any guesses? Divya has guessed it correct. That's good, Divya. You've guessed your name right. Okay. Now here, let me put it 1, 2, 5. Any guesses what happens if I run this? Can anyone tell me what happened? Why am I getting Raj, Sandeep and Divya when I had given 1 to 5? That's right, it prints till the maximum, it does not reach 5. So this is something important. This does not give you an error. It basically prints till the end that you can find in the list. So always remember, in case if you specify a wrong range, you do not get an error there. So are we clear with respect to tuples and tuple operations? Okay, Santosh, coming back to your question. So we saw earlier using strings, there were certain type specific operations that you can specify. Let's see what you can do when you use mytuple. Mytuple dot. You can count the number of elements in the string. Index, that is you wish to extract an index value. Apart from that, there are no other operations that you can directly perform on. Now if you wish to add an element to a list, now tuple basically is a list, but if you are adding an element to the tuple, you're going to be using an inbuilt command called update. But in case of a tuple, this is not present. We will be seeing this when we're talking more about list, and I'll help you understand how you can update a list. So any questions with respect to tuples? Okay, Raj is clear, so is Divya, Santosh, Ajay, Neha. Okay, let's move forward. Now moving forward, let's look at list. Now you would have heard of list a lot, but again, as I mentioned earlier, now list basically is a collection of various numbers, strings, literals and so forth. So you can look at the example here itself. Now when you see a list basically is defined in square brackets. So earlier we had seen it was using a curve braces, but here you're using a square braces. Be sure if you're using a list, then you use a square braces. In case if you use a curly braces, it will be considered to be a tuple and you'll not be able to modify it. Okay, let's look at some of the operations that we perform using list. So similarly, you have concatenation, you have repetition, you have slicing, and then you have indexing. Now you've seen the same for tuples, so I'm not going to repeat this as such, but let's look at the type specific operations. Now here you have append operation. Now using the append operator, I have a list that has 1A and 2.5. Now once I call list.append and I specify the value that I wish to add, then what happens is that value gets added to my list. But let's say if you wish to extend your list to multiple variables, then you can use the extend operator. inside which you will be specifying another list, and these would be added to my original list. So where I had 1a and 2.5, once I use list.extend where I am specifying C and D, then it gets updated to 1a, 2.5, C and D. Now, similar to the append and extend is the insert operator, but using the insert operator there's something specific that you can do, that is you can specify a certain position in your list where you wish to add an element. So here what I've done is that I've specified 2 and then B. So basically what it means is that I need to add B third place from the start of the list. So again, when I say 2, our indexing starts from 0, so this basically means B will come between A and 2.5. So you can see the output 1AB 2.5. Finally is the pop operation. Now pop basically is removing one by one element from the list. So this actually follows a top-down approach. Now the last value that was inserted into the list. So here you have C to be the last value that would be removed from that list. So let me just show you some of these examples. So let's say I have my list. So again, don't forget to define a list. You're going to be using a square bracket, and here let's set certain values. This time let me take colors, so I'll go with green, then you have red. Now make sure these are in quotes because these are strings. Then there's blue, yellow. Oh, Divya wants pink too. Okay, I'll put in pink. So let's see some of the list specific operations. My list dot. We have pop, we have append. So let's begin by append. So to my existing list I want to add gray, and I'll print it. Let's just run this, and you can see gray has also been appended to my list. Similarly, let me show you extend operator, how it works. So here make sure you're specifying whatever value you want in square braces. So I'll add in white and black. So white, and if I print the list again, so now we've extended our list. Let's run this. Right click on run. So you can see the two new values have been added. So these values you can either specify them, or let's say if you have another list, then again you can use it. So Raj, coming back to your question on how tuples were immutable and lists are mutable, I hope you've gotten your answer. So you can see the values present in my list have been getting updated as I have wanted. But in my tuple I did not have this choice. So are you clear, Raj? Has this helped you out? Okay, that's great to hear. So now that we've seen lists, let's move forward and look at the next data type, that is dictionary. Now, when we talk about dictionary, it is one of the most flexible built-in data types in Python. Now, dictionary basically stores your data in a key value fashion. So where you have a key and a corresponding value. Now, when you look at the example here, you have my dict is equal to 1, and the value for 1 key is Josh. Similarly, for 2 you have Bob, and 3 you have James. Now don't get confused that this is the only way that you can use a dictionary. Now there are mainly 4 examples of dictionary that you can see here. Now first, you can either have an empty dictionary where you can add values later as you wish. Then you have the integer key dictionary. So this is an example that we had just seen where you have integers to be keys and their corresponding value. But this is not the only way that you can have a dictionary. You can even have a mixed key where you have a string to be a key value, as well as you can have an integer to be a key value. Similarly, in my value position I can even have a list as well. Or let's say you already have a sequence present here and you wish to add your dictionary, then you can do that as well. So are you clear with the types of dictionary that we can have? So John has a good question here. John is asking me what happens when I have same key repeated in my dictionary. So John, basically I think you are trying to say if you have duplicate keys present in your dictionary. Yeah, alright. So in that case, John, basically your dictionary does not accept multiple keys, but even if there are multiple key value combinations present, that is you have duplicate keys present in your dictionary, then the latest value for the key would be considered and all the values before that would be discarded. But again, you may get an error depending on the version of Python that you're using. I'll just show you that, don't worry. So equal to, now here as I mentioned, dictionary comes in curly braces. So we have key value combination, so one key, my value is going to be green, two key is giving me blue, is giving me blue, then we have three key which is corresponding to red. Then what I'll do is I'll put in two key with my color value to be gray. So you can see already that there is an error that is showing here, dictionary contains duplicate key. But let me see what happens when I print it. So let's say print my dictor, and if I run it, I have one green, two to be gray, and three to be red. So you can see what is happening here. Two initially I had defined to be blue, then when I had repeatedly defined it to be gray, it has taken the newer value. So does this answer your question, John? I hope this example was clear to you. Alright, that's great to hear. Now coming back, with dictionary we have certain methods that we can perform. Now with dictionary there are certain operations that you can perform. So let's say if you wish to identify a value for a specific key, then all you need to do is that you need to specify the value as an index to that dictionary. So here I have printed my dictionary. So if I say 3 and if I rerun this, then I get red. So what it basically means is that for the key value 3, my corresponding value is red. Okay, apart from that you have operators like length. Now using length you can get the number of key value combinations that are present in your dictionary, and then let's say if you wish to extract all the key values, then you can extract it using mydictionary.key. So this will print the complete list of keys present in your dictionary. So in this case I have only 1 and 2, so 1 and 2 is being printed. Now again, let's say if you wish to identify all the values present in that dictionary, you can use the values function. Now apart from that, let's say if you wish to have the complete combination, that is the key value, and you wish to have the corresponding value present to it as well, then you can use the items option. Now when you use the items option, it completely prints the key value directly and it makes it easier for you to identify it. Okay, Sandeep has a question here. Sandeep is asking me if I can have multiple keys with the same value. Now Sandeep, you can definitely have multiple key values which have the same value. Was that clear, Sandeep? Okay, now let's say if you wish to extract a value for a key, then again you can use the get function which will give you the value for the key that you have specified, and if you wish to update any value to your dictionary, then you can use the update command. Now I'll show you how it works out. So let's go back to our PyCharm. So we've seen how we can print the keys in the dictionary. Let me show you how we can print the values. Let's say print my dictionary object dot values. If you run it, then you can see the values present in the dictionary. Now let me show you how to update your dictionary. Let's say my dictionary dot update. So here make sure you're using curly braces and then set your key value combination. So I'm going to specify 4 and then the corresponding value. So let's say white, and then let me reprint my dictionary. So you can see here the key 4 as well as the value white has been added to my dictionary. So any questions with respect to dictionary? Okay, so Divya wants me to give her an example where we'll be using a dictionary. Now Divya, the dictionary literally translates to the same natural dictionary that you're using, like where for every word you have a meaning, but let's say you're writing a huge program. This program is not going to be seen only by you as well. So there'll be multiple programmers working on this. So here let's say you're going to be using variables of your own. Now using a dictionary, what you can do is that you can set the variable name as the key, and then in the value section you can give an explanation as to why this variable is being used or where it is being used or what is its purpose. So this in turn will help the developers to understand the use of that variable. So was that helpful, Divya? Alright. So any other questions with respect to dictionary? Can I move forward? Great. Now after dictionary we have sets. Now A set is basically an unordered collection, but the thing here that makes set a separate data type is that you cannot have duplicate elements present in a set. That is, a set can have only unique elements. Okay, so I have a question here from John. John is asking me what happens if I specify duplicates elements in a set. Okay, John, let me show you this directly with an example itself. Let's go to sets. Let's say my set. Again, set is defined inside curly braces. So here I'll just give numerical values. So let's say 1, 2, 5, 7. Let me put in another 5, 10, 8, 2, 1. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to print this set. If you run it, you can see the output yourself. So I have 1, 2, 5, 7, 8 and 10. The repeated values are not considered to be part of my set. Is this clear now, John? Alright. Now moving forward, let's look at some of the operations that you can perform using sets. Now there are mainly 3 operations that you can perform using a set. Similar to the mathematical set that we've all seen, you have the union operation, you have the intersection operation, and then you have the difference operation. Now similar to the normal union operation, let's say you have 2 sets, you have set 1 and set 2. When you perform union, all the elements from both these sets are combined, but these are the only unique elements. So you have 1, 2, C and B. Where originally between both sets you had 6 elements, after union you have 4 elements. Now when you look at intersection, basically what you're seeing is the elements that are common in the first set in comparison to the second set, or the common elements present between the set. And that is your solution to your intersection. Again, when you look at difference, what you're seeing basically are the elements that are present in your first set but not in your second set. So when you say ms1 minus ms2, you can see 2 is present in set 1 but not present in set 2. If you have done the inverse, that is ms2 minus ms1, then can anyone tell me what the value would have been? That's right, Rahul, the answer would have been B. So I'll just show you these outputs. So one thing, if you guys would have just noticed, is that you cannot use space while you're naming any variables in Python. So it is always recommended that you use an underscore if you wish to separate the characters, but you cannot use space while you're naming a character in Python. So let me put in 2, 5, 9, 7, 15 and 20. Now we want to print the union. So for union operation, it is set 1 and a vertical slash, followed by my set 2. Similarly, I'll do it for intersection. So for the intersection, who can tell me what the operator was? Yes, Rahul, that was AND. It's good to see that you're involved in this. And finally, for the difference, correct, Divya, it is minus. Let's run this. You can see the union has all the unique elements as well as all the elements present between both the sets. Intersection checks which elements are common between the first and the second, and you get the output there. And difference gives us the elements that are present in the first set but not in the second set. So are we clear with respect to sets and how they function? Any questions with respect to sets? Okay, so I've got a confirmation from Raj, Santosh, Ajay, Divya, Shweta, Sneha. That's great. That's great to see all of you are interested and well up caught up. So it's great to see that all of you have caught up. Now again, if you are facing any troubles while executing these commands, or if you're not clear with any of these concepts, do let me know. We can clarify it then and there itself. If you are facing any errors, let me know. I can help you clarify it there. Now moving forward, let's look at flow control statements. Now when we talk about flow control statements, There are majorly 7 statements through which you can change the flow of a program. Now if else, and if elif else. Now these are actually related conditional statements where if basically checks with only one condition, else tells you if that condition is not true what to do, and elif can be used in case of multiple conditions. And then when you look at for and while, these statements are mainly used when you wish to perform loop operations. Now I have a good set of programs that you'll be working when we're talking about looping statements. Stay tuned, don't worry. And when we talk about break and continue, these basically define how the flow of the program should go. Now don't worry, we'll be going in depth with each of them one by one. So let's start with the if statement. Now when we talk about the if statement, so as I've mentioned to you earlier, you basically check if a condition is true. Now in case if my condition is true, it executes a set of programs that are branched inside the statement. So here the syntax, you see if, then you have the condition, and then you have the statements to be executed in case the condition is true. But in case if my condition is not true, then what happens is the control goes to the else statement. Here there is no checking of condition, so whatever statement that you have specified inside else will execute if this condition of if is false. That is, if doesn't go to execute block 1, then it goes and executes block 2. So are you clear with respect to if? Okay, so Divya is asking me what do I do in case I have 5 different conditions. Good question, Divya. Now in that case what happens is we'll be using the next control statement, that is the if, elif and else statement. So here what happens is that first you're going to be checking the if condition. Now if it is not true, then let's say you have other conditions to check. So those will be defined as inside the elif statement. So you will have one if and then you'll have multiple elif conditions. So each one would be checked individually. Whichever would be found true, you would go inside that condition and execute that statement there. In case none of these conditions are true, then you'll reach to the else part and execute the final statement present here. So are you clear now, Divya? Okay, so what I'll do is I'll write a program in which I'll use if and else, so that way it will be easier for you to understand. So let's take one of the most popular examples here. Let's say we'll consider marks. So my marks is equal to 75. I've got 75 marks in one subject. Now if, then you're going to open a condition, my marks is greater than 80%, that is 80, then so to enter into the condition, make sure you specify a colon and then press enter. Always make sure you're following the correct indentation, as this is something that will really help you out while you're debugging your code. So if I've got 80%, then print grade A. That is, if you've scored above 80%, then print grade A. Elif. Again, you need to specify your condition, that is marks are greater than 60%. And I also have another condition here. If my marks are less than or equal to 80. So basically what you're doing is that you're checking if my marks lies between 61 to 80. So in that case, put a colon here. Let's enter the elif condition. So here let's print grade B, print. Let's put another elif, marks greater than 40% and marks less than equal to 60. Then I'm going to give him grade C. So if my marks is less than equal to 60, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give him grade C. So print. And finally, I'm going to define the else condition. That is, if he gets below 40, then I'm going to give him grade D. So are we clear with respect to the flow of this program? So I've already defined my marks to be 75. So first it will check if marks is greater than 80. If it is, it will go into the statement and print grade A. Else it will go into the elif part. Again check if my marks is greater than 60 but less than equal to 80. So here you're using a logical operator. So only in case if both of these conditions are true, will it go inside the statement. Similarly, if it is less than 60, then it will come back to the next statement. It will check if it is greater than 40 and it is between 41 and 60, and then it will print grade C if it is true. And finally, if it is below 40, then it will print grade D. Let me just run this and you can see it, we are getting grade B. So any questions with how if else and if elif and else works? Okay, so Divya is clear, so is John, Ajay, Matthew, Jessica. That's great to see. Now let's move on to look at looping statements. Now basically you're going to be using looping statements when we have to repeatedly do certain actions. That is, a certain set of instructions or codes have to be executed multiple number of times. Now based on the number of times that you wish to execute these codes, you can use two of the types of loop conditions that we have. Now the first is the while loop and the second is the for loop. Now the main difference between when to use while loop and when to use for loop is that you need to be aware of the number of iterations. That is, if you know how many times the loop has to run, then you'd be using a for loop, or let's say you're not aware of the number of times that the loop has to execute, then you'll be using a while loop. So any questions with respect to these two loop statements and what a loop statement is? Okay, so John is clear, Jessica is clear, so is Tyler, Ajay, Santosh, that's great. So now let's look at while statement. Now basically the while statement just checks a single condition. If it is found to be true, then it moves on to execute the statements that are defined inside it. So if you see here, what happens first is that it checks the condition, and if it is found to be true, then it goes on to execute the block. And again it goes back to the while loop, start of the while loop, the condition is again checked. If it is found to be true, it keeps entering and the code gets executed till the condition is to be found false. Once it's found to be false, then you exit the loop and execute the statements that are after it. So I'll be giving you a situation where you'll be using while statement that will help you understand how the while statement works better. So let's go back to our PyCharm. Now before we go forward, what we'll be doing is we'll be finding the sum of n numbers. Now this n value that you'll be accepting from the user. So here I'll also help you understand how you can take an input from the user. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to store it in a num variable. Num is equal to input of. Now here let's say if you wish to print any statement, then you can put it in quotes, enter the value of n. But one thing you need to remember here is that when you're taking an input from the user, it is considered to be a string. So we need an integer value to be taken as input, so we're going to convert the type. So when you say int of input, then here what you're doing is that the input taken from the user is considered to be an integer value. Now are you clear with what we're doing here? Okay, so Tyler is clear, so is John, Matthew, that's good. Again, please remember when you're taking an input value from the user, it is considered to be a string. So if you need an integer value, then you need to convert it to int. So let's say first thing that you'll be doing is that you'll be checking if the number is greater than equal to 0. Now this is important because to proceed forward, it makes no sense to compute the sum if the value is less than or equal to 0. So let's say if my number is lesser than equal to 0, then I'm going to print enter a valid value. Then come to the else part. Here let's begin by first initializing sum is equal to 0. Now my sum is the variable in which I'll be storing the overall sum. Now after that, let's use a while statement. Now I know the value of my n, and I know it is going to be counted down till 0. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to write num greater than 0. So here what we're basically going to do is that we're going to add the value of the number that you have taken as input and then keep decrementing this value till 0 and then getting the overall sum. So are you clear with the logic? Alright, so again put a colon, sum plus equal to my number. So I need to decrement my value of number by 1, so minus equal to 1. Now this will execute till the value of number is greater than 0. Now once you've completed with that, let's just print the value of sum and let me just execute the statement. So it's asking you for the value of n, so I'll say 15 and you can see the value to be 120. So any questions with respect to how the while loop executes? Okay, so Santosh is clear, John, Matthew, Ajay, Tyler, that's great to see. So again, you can try out these programs simultaneously. In case if you're facing any troubles, let me know, I'll be able to assist you. Okay, so now that we have understood while statement, let's look at the for statement. Now, the for statement is something that you will be using when you know the number of iterations that has to occur. So the syntax for basically is you can write the for keyword, then you're going to specify the iterator name. This can be name of any variable or any iterator that you wish to set, and then you're going to be using a sequence. Now the sequence can either be a range of numbers, it can be a list, it can even be a tuple. So based on the data in the tuple or the list, you can execute this for till the number of elements present in that range. So are you clear with this? Now one thing to be kept in mind here is that you do not need to increment the value of incrementer. It automatically gets incremented by 1 every time the statements gets executed. Okay, now coming to the execution of for statement. So before I go ahead, how many of you are familiar with the beer song? That is the 99 beer song. Okay, that's a good number. So for those of you who are not familiar with the 99 beer song, this basically is a sequence of strings that, or let's say the lyrics of the 99 song. Let me show you how it looks like. So this is the sequence of strings that you'll be printing in the 99 song. So you start off with 99 bottles of beer on the wall, then you have 99 bottles of beer. Take one down and pass it around, you have 98 bottles of beer on the wall. Then again you start from 98 bottles of beer on the wall, 99 bottles of beer. Take one down and pass it around, you have 97 bottles of beer. So here what you're basically doing is that you're executing a set of statements multiple number of times, but the value present in them keeps changing. So I'll just show you how you can write this using, so this actually goes from 99 and goes all the way down till you have 0 bottles left. So you can see finally when you reach the end, no more bottles of beer on the wall, no more bottles of beer. Go to the store, go buy some more 99 bottles of beer on the wall. Now I'll just show you how to write this code in 15 lines. Yes, it's going to be only 15 lines, John, don't worry. Okay, now we'll start off with our for loop itself directly. So for, I'm going to use a variable called quantity. So let's say QUANT, quantity in. Now I wish to execute it 99 times. So what I'm going to use is another function that is range. Here I'm going to start from 99 and it has to go down to 0. And finally it has to increment by -1. Now this basically means my starting position is 99 and my end position is 0. Now to reach here you're going to specify a common increment value that is -1. So are you clear with respect to this command? For quant in range 99, 0 and -1. Alright. Okay. So Tyler wants me to explain range again. So Tyler, range basically, when you use range, it specifically refers to a range of numerical values that you want. So let's say if you wish to iterate the loop 10 times, okay, then what you're going to do is that you're going to specify the value of range just to be 10. So here what I want is, I want my quantity numbers to start from 99 and then it has to reach to 0, but it has to keep decrementing by -1. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to specify my start point, I'm going to specify my end point and my increment value. So are you clear now? Alright. Yes, quant is the name of the variable that I'm going to be using. Okay, so let's say, so first thing that I'm going to check is if my value of quant is greater than 1. So if it is greater than 1, then I'm going to print the value of quant, comma, then I'm going to say bottles of beer on the wall. Again, then you have quant, now this sentence is basically similar to this statement. So if you can take any statement, you have the corresponding current value, bottles of beer on the wall, then again the current value and the bottles of beer statement repeated again. So this is what we are achieving by printing this. Now this is only in case if my quant is greater than 1. So let's say, so again let me check if my quant value is greater than 2, then I'm going to use a new variable named as suffix, which is basically a string in which I'll store my next statement, which is equal to str of quant. So here what you're doing is that you're converting the quant variable into a string value, and then with that you're concatenating . So are you clear what we're doing here? We're first converting the value of quant to string and then concatenating this value to the corresponding statement, that is bottles of beer on the wall. So you can see that is the next one. So this is the statement. Now if this is not true, then else my suffix equal to 1 bottle. Now with this we have defined the general conditions that have to be executed if my value of quant is greater than 1. So in case if my quant is greater than 1, so we've written the conditions that need to be executed if my quant is greater than 1, but let's say if my quant is equal to 1, then print and print 1 bottle of beer. Finally, since I have only 1 bottle, so I have to update my suffix as well. So suffix becomes take 1 down and pass it around, and after this we're going to print the suffix that we have just computed. Okay, now this may seem a bit complicated to you, but trust me, it's very simple. Once you've executed, you will understand how it works. So to differentiate each statement, I'm going to put print . So let me explain this statement again. So first you're going to compute your for loop from a specific range from 99 to 0. If the value of your quant is greater than 1, then you're going to print the value of quant followed by the statement. And if your value of quant is greater than 0, then you're specifying the suffix value to be the statement. Now in case if it's equal to 1, then you're going to print 1 bottle of beer on the wall, 1 bottle of beer, and no more beer on the wall. So let me just execute this and show you how it runs. So here you can see how the for loop starts from 99 and then it goes on all the way till you have one bottle on the wall, take it down and pass it around, no more beer. So are we clear with how the for loop works? We've known that we have to execute these set of statements 99 times. So what we've done, we've put it in a for loop and then we've gone ahead and executed. Okay, so Matthew is clear, John, Tyler, Divya, that's great. So now coming back, when we talk about the break statement. Now, the break statement is something that mainly helps you in coming out of a loop in case you've met a certain condition. Now, let's say you're dividing a number inside a loop. So here what happens is you can put a statement that if that number is equal to 0, then you need to come out of that loop. Because dividing beyond that actually gives you an invalid answer. So if your number that you're dividing is equal to 0, then you can come out of that loop. So what happens is once this condition is met, then when you have specified the break condition inside that, it leaves the loop and comes out of it. So are you clear on how you use a break statement? So for helping you understand how the break statement works, let me begin by using a variable count, which I'm going to assign as 0. Then we'll use a while loop. Now the while loop is set to run infinite number of times, because when you say while is equal to true, it will run till you specify a break condition to come out of it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to print my count and then keep incrementing it. So count plus equal to 1. So the value of count is going to be incremented by 1 every time. Then what I'll do is I'll write an if condition. If my count becomes greater than 10, then execute a break. Let's just run this. So you can see a loop that was supposed to run infinite number of times has been restricted to 11 times. Starting from 0, it goes all the way till 10. The moment the value of count increases to 11, you break out from this loop. So are you clear with respect to how break helps you coming out of a loop? Okay. Now similar to the break statement, we have the continue statement. Now what continue statement does is that it ensures that if the condition has been met, then the statements that follow the continue keyword does not get executed. So let's say you have certain set of statements that are written after continue. If the continue gets executed, then these statements do not get executed and then you go on to the next iteration. Now to give you a better understanding of this, I'll give you an example itself directly. What I'm going to do is that let's say for x in a range of 20. So here Tyler, what you're doing, coming back to your previous question, is that x is my variable and range means I'm going to execute this loop 20 times. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to print all the odd numbers present in this range. So if my x mod 2 equals 0, then put a colon and then continue it. Now if it is not, that is, then what you're going to do is you're going to print the value of x. I'll just run this. So I'll just run this code. So you can see here all the odd numbers from 1 to 20 have been printed here. So any value when divided by 2 gives me value as 0 has been removed from this. So any questions with respect to how continue statement works? It is just that if this condition is true, then you do not execute the print statement and you go to the next iteration of that loop. Are we clear with respect to how the continue statement works? Okay, so John is clear, so is Santosh, Swati, Sneha, Divya, that's great. So with this we've come to an end of the flow control statements. So any questions with respect to any of the flow control statements, that is the if, elif, else, the looping statements like for, while, continue and the break statements? Alright. So after this we have the functions. Now when we talk about functions, there are mainly two types. There is the user defined function and the built-in function. So we've actually seen some of the built-in functions earlier when we were using the type-based functions. So the type-based methods were some of the built-in functions that we have seen. Apart from that, we can also define a user-defined function. But again, coming back to the basic definition of what a function is, it is basically an organized set of rules or instructions that you wish to perform multiple number of times. So every time that you wish to perform these set of instructions, all you need to do is that you need to call them. So this is one of the main components of one of the major methodology style, that is the procedural style. So in case of a procedural style, you will be following the key uses of functionals. Okay, so let's come to the definition of functions. So here basically you have a function which helps you in adding two numbers. So before you begin any function, you start off with the keyword def. After that, you'll be specifying the name of that function as well as the arguments that this function takes. Once you've said that, put a colon and then specify the operations that you wish to perform in this function. So here what I'm doing is that I'm computing the result of the two arguments that I've taken as input, and then I'm returning it to my function call. So again, I've read my number 1 to be 1, number 2 to be 2, and then I'm calling the add function here. So this is basically the reference to that function, and this is a return to that function. So whatever value would be computed here would be returned to the function call, and it will get printed here. So any questions with respect to the function definition or what a function is? Okay, Rahul is clear, so is Tyler, John, Matthew. That's great. Now moving ahead, functions use pass by reference methodology. Again, when you say pass by reference, we are going to follow the call by object reference. Now to help you understand this concept, let's look at the image here. So what I have here is I have a function that modifies my list that is passed as input. So let's look at the original list. So we have a hero villain list where you have hero's name as well as its villain's name, and then you're calling the function from here. So what happens is the values present in this list is going to be stored in the input.list, and when you're upgrading this value, it does not affect this list. And you can see that clearly when you're executing this list. So when you're trying to print the list for the first time, you can see the original value has been set as same even though you are calling the function to modify this value. So what happens here is that the reference to both these lists are pointing to two different objects. It is not the same object that gets modified here. So are you clear with this? It's important that you understand this because this is basically how functions work in Python. Alright, now to help you understand how a function works, let me write a function here. Now what we're going to do is that we're going to define a function which will help us compute a Fibonacci series. So start with def, which means you're going to define a function, then the function name, and then the argument that the function will take. So let's say n, and then a colon to help it understand you're starting your function. I have a is equal to 0 and b equal to 1. This is basically the start of my Fibonacci series. Then for my x in range of n, basically I'm going to increment the for loop n number of times. What you're going to do is that a is going to be equal to b and b is going to be equal to a plus b. Here let's just print a. I'll put in a new line character as well. And finally what I'm going to do is I'm going to return the final value. Now all I need to do is that I need to take the input from the user and then call the function. Now let's say num equal to, again int, as we've discussed we need to typecast it, input, enter the value of n, and then we call the Fibonacci series. So print Fibo of number. Let's execute this. So let's say I wish to compute the first 50 Fibonacci series. So you have the value for the first 50 Fibonacci series. I'll rerun it. Let me execute for the first 5000. So again, you can see Python has calculated the first 5000 numbers of the Fibonacci series. So are you clear with respect to how to write a function and how a function works? So you have the function name, you start with the def function, then if you wish to return a value, you'll be using return, and then make sure you're using a correct function call. So please let me know in case if you have any queries with respect to the function, because this is an essential component of our Python programming concepts. Alright, so Tyler is clear. So is John, Ajay, Matthew, that's great to hear. Now that we've finished understanding functions, let's go into file handling in Python. Now, using Python, you can mainly perform all the file operations that you wish. Now, there are mainly 4 stages of file handling in Python. You begin by opening the file, then if you wish to perform a read, you'll perform a read, then there's a write, and finally, once you've completed your operation on the file, then you need to close the file. Now, it's important that you close the file because every time that you open a file, there's a lock mechanism set to it. So in case if you forget to mention closing the file, then what happens is that once you've completely executed that program, it becomes hard for any of the applications to open that file. So always if you are opening a file, make sure you close the file. Now this is an example of file handling happening. So what you're going to be doing is that you're going to be using a file object. This is basically a reference to the file that is present. Then once you specified the open command, you need to specify the location of that file. Now there are 12 different modes in which you can open a file. Now we'll discuss them individually in detail in our file handling classes, but let me just give you an overview of this. You have a read, you have a write, you have a read plus where you can both read and write, you have a write plus where you can both read and write, then you have the append mode and so forth. So if you wish to perform a file read, then you always need to specify file object dot read functions. This again is a type specific operation. So using this, what happens is that you're going to be reading the contents that are present inside the file. And if you wish to write into the file, you're going to be using object.write, and then you're going to specify the string, or you're going to specify the multi-line string that you wish to write into that file. So I'll just show you how it's done. Let's say I have a file pointer fp equal to open. So here let me specify the path. So I'm going to say d. So then let me specify the path of that file. Now I do not have a file present at current. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a new file in the directory d/edureka and with the name python.txt. So d/edureka/python.txt. Then the mode in which I'm going to open the file. Now since this file does not exist, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to open it in a write plus mode where I can read it and write it, and since the file is not present, what will happen is a new file will be created in this mode. So open the quotes w plus, then I want to write certain lines into the file. So let's say fp.write and the string that I wish to add into that. So let's say Python is fun. Now before I read the contents in the file, what I need to do is that I need to move the file pointer seeker. So the seeker is basically a point in your file where you're currently located in. So if you've written 10 lines, then your seeker would be present in the 10th line. So what we need to do is that we need to set it to the 0th position, that is the first line, and then start reading from there. So that way we can read the complete file. So to do that, just use fp.seek and then the position. Then let me print the contents of the file, fp.read. And finally, as I've mentioned, always make sure you close the file. So fp.close. So let me just run this. So you can see Python is fun has been printed into my file. So let me show you the file. So if you go inside my D drive, you have Edureka folder and you have python.txt. So here Python is fun has been printed. Now let's say I'm going to add another line, say fp.write. Here let's say this was a great day. So can anyone tell me if these lines will be either added to the existing line or will it override the existing content? Okay, so I have both answers from most people. So let's just run this. So Python is fun. This was a great day. If you open the file, you can see it has overwritten it. So in the W plus mode, if there's any content present in that file, you're going to be overwriting this. Now don't worry, we'll be talking about the file management in detail in our upcoming session. Now to summarize what we've learned today, we started off with an introduction to Python, then we moved on to understand who uses Python as well as the features of Python, then I helped you out with the Python installation, and then we saw the various Python operators. Then moving ahead, we saw the 7 different types of data that are present in Python, and then we saw how you can control the flow of a program in Python, as well as we wrote a user-defined function and we managed the file. So any questions with respect to today's session that I can help you clarify? Okay, so with that we come to a conclusion of the session. In case if you do have any queries or feedbacks, do let me know, and hope you have a great day. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries and we will reply to them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to our Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!